What's going on, everybody? It's ShamefulPenguin here, back with another video. Today I'm going to be showing you guys my cast on crit Ice Nova Assassin build. This build is excellent to play, really fast, really satisfying pops of the build. That was the main reason I chose it, because if you guys have seen my previous build, I really enjoy explosions in builds and good clearing mappers. So this build is really excelling in all of those properties. In bossing, it can do all the bosses, but it's more of a struggle on things like level 8 Awakener and Uber Elder, but it can do things like Shaper Guardians with not too much of a problem, or like level 8 Redeemer is actually a really easy fight. So those kind of bosses are actually really easy, but the higher end bosses this can struggle on. This build is low life. There is a CI variant of this build where you actually have more tankiness. So if you're playing on a hardcore league, I recommend going CI over this low life. But otherwise, I think the low life does more damage and is overall more fun. There's a few variants for this build. I'll include on what you guys can choose for things like the Ascendency choices, but overall, I'm going to be showing you guys what my train of thought was and what I recommend for you guys doing, and I'm going to explain how the skill works, and for those newer players on why I chose certain things and what to look for in each piece of gear. So let's get into how cast on crit works. We're using cast on crit in two ways. The first way we're using it is from Cospris Malice. Cospris Malice gives us our cast on crit with melee crit strike, and it only uses cold skills. Now the cast on crit on our sword, on our Cospris Malice, can only be 3 linked, and it can only use this cold skills. So we're not utilizing that much damage from this. We're actually utilizing these as like utilities to buff our other cast on crit. By the other cast on crit, I mean our body armor. We're going to link cast on crit support with Cyclone and Ice Nova. So cast on crit works by using an attack skill. When you hit a crit with the attack spell, it casts a spell gem. So with Cyclone being our attack skill, because it has a really good attack speed and it procs the most per second, and it's a really smooth skill to use, which is really popular. When you hit a crit with our Cyclone, we proc an Ice Nova. This is really good because Ice Nova does a ton of damage, and it's usually pretty clunky to cast, but we bypass that by putting it on a cast on crit to do huge damage in our Cyclone cast on crit setup. On our Cospri, we have Frost Bomb, another Ice Nova, and Frostbolt, just to make more use of the cast and crit that we currently have. And once we get into the gem link section, I'll explain our choices of the gem links. But that's how cast on crit works. We actually have to prioritize accuracy and crit chance, not only spell crit, but just crit chance alone, because we want to make sure Cyclone, which is an attack skill, has the highest chance to crit and land an attack. So we need to get a lot of accuracy and crit chance in this build, and you're going to see a lot of that in our gear. This portion of the build is going to be the gearing section of the build. I'm going to be talking about the mandatory uniques first and why we use them, and then I'm going to be talking about what rolls we're looking for on the rest of our pieces that are all rare. So first, we're going to need a Cospris Malice. This is the main sword of the build. This gives us the trigger a socketed cold spell on melee crit. This is pretty much cast on crit, but we're using these links as utility. It also gives us cold damage and crit strike chance against chilled enemies. So this is an excellent sword to use. Our choice of shield is the Prism Guardian, because we are going low life, so we want to be able to reserve life, and other than using blood magic support, we can use this shield to apply to our auras, so we reserve life instead of mana. This is an excellent option because it also gives plus level of our gems, and it's a great overall pick for low life builds. Our choice of body armor is the Chevron's Wrappings, because it allows chaos damage to not bypass our energy shield, so we don't get one shot by things when we reserve our life to use it as a pool for our auras to reserve it. This is an excellent choice because it gives a little bit of energy shield and it allows us not to spec into CI, so we can use our life pool to reserve. Most low life builds will use this body armor, so it's going to be a popular choice for almost any build going low life. Now I'm going to be going over the rare pieces of gear we're going to be looking for. First, our helmet. We want a Hubris helmet with Redeemer influence. Redeemer influence primarily because we want to roll nearby enemies have -9 to cold resistance. Excellent skill, gives us a ton of damage, and we're pretty much always nearby with Cyclone. Other primary rolls we're looking for are energy shield rolls and accuracy rating. Secondary rolls we're looking for are physical damage from hits taken as cold, elemental resistance, chance to freeze and freeze duration, and intelligence. Some helmet enchants are on the screen that I recommend for you guys. My primary enchant that I'm looking for is Ice Nova, has a chance to freeze, so we have better bossing opportunities, because most bosses can be frozen except for the super high tier ones, so this just makes our gameplay a lot smoother. Now for the gloves, we're looking for sorcerer gloves or fingerless silk gloves with the incursion roll of increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. This will give us a lot of bonus damage. This roll also has cold resistance built into it, so it's a little bit nicer. But the main thing we're looking for is we want the damage against chilled enemies. Other primary rolls we want are energy shield rolls and accuracy. You're going to see that's a theme throughout all these items. And secondary rolls we want are elemental resistance and intelligence. As for the boots, we'll want a hunter influence, as many of you probably already know. We want sorcerer boots with hunter influence because you want hunter influence at level 75 will allow you to get tailwind if you've dealt a critical strike recently, so this will make our action speed a lot faster. Other primary rolls you're looking for are energy shield and movement speed, and secondary rolls elemental resistance and intelligence. As for your amulet, you're going to want a hunter or redeemer influence so you can get the +1 level of cold gems or intelligence gems. And then other rolls you're going to want are energy shield and global crit strike multiplier, very good rolls. Secondary rolls you're looking for are damage penetrates cold resistance or elemental resistance, +2 maximum energy shield, accuracy rating, or elemental resistance. There are a lot of good options to get amulets. You can also get the expensive Pandemonious Jade Amulet. This is an expensive option. It gives us a lot of damage, but I think a rare jewel with good rolls do a lot more good for this build overall. As for the rings, you'll want the Circle of Fear. We're looking for the 2 rolls on it, increased cold damage while affected by Herald, and Herald of Ice has increased buff effect. Getting both these rolls quite expensive, so I'm going to be recommending you guys to get the increased cold damage while affected by Herald of Ice, and then just get the second roll as a whatever roll, like plus max to max cold res or reduced reservation, just so you can get a cheaper budget version and then save up for the dual roll, and then you can get high rolls on those and good implicits later on. As for the second ring, we're going to want a Shaper influenced ring. That way we can get cursed enemies with Assassin's Mark on hit. This allows our crits to do a lot more and generate power charges. You're also going to want energy shield and accuracy rating on your ring. And you're also going to want non-channeling skills that have minus to total mana cost. This allows our Cyclone to sustain forever. You never run out of mana. If you get one roll with taking Mystic Bulwark from your passive tree, you can just stay in Cyclone forever without ever worrying about mana, so it's pretty great. And you want your mana cost to be at least 1, so Inspiration can always generate charges. If your mana cost for a Cyclone is 0, you will never generate Inspiration charges. Secondary rolls you're looking for: chance to freeze and cold damage against chilled or frozen enemies. Add cold damage to spells and attacks, global crit strike chance, and elemental resistance. Next, I'm going to be going over what belt to use. The belt base you're going to want is a Crystal or Stygian Vise. Both of them are great options, either giving a huge implicit of ES or being able to use an extra jewel socket with a Redeemer influence. Redeemer influence will allow us to do increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. So you're going to be looking for that role and maximum energy shield on your belt. Other great roles to look out for is to remove, chill, and freeze when you use a flask. This will allow you to not have to worry about getting freeze removal on a flask, and you can use curse removal instead. Another good role, increased cold damage, getting elemental resistance, and getting attributes. Things like strength and dex are you're able to get on the belt, and getting that will allow you to free up some of your passive points if you're using that to give yourself enough stats. As for the flasks, you're going to want some magic rarity flasks, a quicksilver and diamond flask. That way you can get your immune to bleed and immune to curse. You're going to want to change immune to curse to immune to freeze if you don't have a belt with freeze immunity, but if you do, you want immune to curse on your flask. Next, I'm going to get into the unique flasks, which is Cinder Swallow. This gives us some great recovery, so you get percentage of our energy shield back when we kill an enemy during flask effect. This is really helpful, so we can just sustain and stay alive. The Wise Oak, you're going to want to make sure your uncapped cold resistance is the highest. That way you can get the cold penetration. And if you have the ability to, if you can get all your uncapped resistance to be all the same, then you're going to get the damage reduction on all your elements. So pretty much global, except for Fizz, damage reduction. So that's pretty nice too. But if you can't, just worry about getting your uncapped cold the highest. Next, I'm going to be using a Rumi's Concoction. This gives us a lot of block. So we get, with Glancing Blows, we can pretty much get really high block chance, capped if not really close to cap. And as an expensive option, you can also use a Bottled Faith. If you have the currency, you would replace that with a Rumi's, because Bottled Faith gives you a ton of crit and just a lot of damage. Now I'm going to be talking about the jewels. The medium jewels we're going to be looking for are area damage with Magnifier and Vast Power. This is a really excellent jewel that gives us more area and more crit multi, so it's helpful. Also, we're going to want a increased effect of non-damaging ailments medium jewel. We want this because it's going to have chilling presence and cold conduction. Cold conduction allows us to shock enemies that we've chilled, and since we constantly chill, we can now shock all enemies, and we don't need to use things like skitterbots on our build to be able to guarantee shock on enemies. Chilling presence allows everything to be chilled around us, so we can guarantee that our first hit is chilled, so we don't have to worry about our second hit being the attack that chills the enemy. Our first attack from can chill the enemy and do all our bonus damage. On a large cluster jewel, you're going to be looking for a cold damage cluster jewel with Blanketed Snow. That's the most important thing you're looking for because it gives us the cold penetration, and if you have the chilling presence on your medium jewel with it, you're just guaranteed cold penetration. Other rolls you're looking for on your large jewel are Widespread Destruction and Prismatic Heart for the bonus damage and the LR res and the AoE. As for the unique jewels, you're going to want a Frozen Trail Cobalt Jewel. This will give you more projectiles with your Frostbolt. I recommend using one of them so your Frostbolts are a little cleaner and easier to use and easier for your Ice Novas can link to it better. A Thread of Hope, not mandatory, but it's a very good. If you have a very large ring, you can spec Glancing Blows, which allows you to double your chance to block, and just gives you a lot more defense than you'd previously have. As the expensive choice, you can use a Watcher's Eye, which gives critical strike chance while affected by hatred. Very expensive. I don't have one yet because they're crazy on the market, but if you can get your hand on one, this will be a lot of extra damage. Next, I'm going to be going over the rare jewels. The rare jewels, I'm going to be putting a list up right here. As you can see on the screen, there's just a bunch of rolls you're going to be looking for on Abyss jewels and regular jewels. Just try to get a few of these on your jewels. You can figure out which ones are better than others. I mean, crit multi is always going to be the most damage, and you're going to always want to have energy shield on all your jewels if you can, because you want your energy shield pool to be as large as possible. But other than that, fit what's necessary to have in your build. You might need a few more strength, so get one of those in your jewels, or if you might need like a little bit more fire res, you can get that in a jewel as well. But yeah, here is all the options that you can use that I recommend checking out if they'll fit in your build better. And yeah, I'm going to be going over our gem link setup. I'm going to be explaining the gem links we use and a little bit of why we use it. So our first main link is going to be on our body armor. We're going to be using Cyclone and Ice Nova cast on crit. Those three are the main premise of the build. We need those three to be on. You can also use an Awaken cast on crit. This will allow you to have cooldown recovery on cast on crit, which does affect how often cast on crit will proc. I don't get too deep into cooldown recovery because I don't think it's more of a headache than it's worth with all these things like server lag and the game ticks not happening perfectly from the server delays and all that stuff. So making it your cooldown recovery perfect for your attack speed is more of a headache than it's worth in the long run, so I believe it's not worth it. So getting an Awaken cast on crit just kind of puts you in that middle field where it's worth it and it works out. But if you don't have the currency for Awaken, don't worry about it. As the fourth link, I'm going to be recommending to use Inspiration. Inspiration is an excellent skill that gives us crit and elemental damage, and also gives us reduced mana cost on skills. Really nice. As a fifth link, I recommend using Hypothermia. This gives us more damage against chilled enemies. We always chill enemies, and it also allows us to good chance to freeze bosses and freeze enemies, which is a really nice buff that gives us a little bit of safety in this build. As the sixth link, Awaken added cold damage is excellent. If you get at level 5, you can have a +1 level of supported cold skill gems, and that gives us a lot of extra damage with this build. Next, I'm going to be talking about the Cospris Malice setup. We have Frost Bomb, Frost Bolt, and Ice Nova. Frost Bomb and Frost Bolt are great utilities because Frost Bomb, when it procs, it gives cold exposure, so we can do more damage to enemies. Frost Bolt allows our Ice Novas to link to that and give us more area. If you guys don't know, Ice Nova and Frost Bolt have this cool interaction that allows Ice Nova to not only be cast on yourself like usual Nova skills, but it can be cast on Frost Bolts. So that's why we use it, to give us that little bit of extra range. And we lastly have that Ice Nova linked on our Cospris because it gives us that extra damage because the base damage from Ice Nova is so high already. Next, I'm going to be going into the shield, which we have linked our auras, Hatred, Discipline, and Zealotry. We get +2 levels, and it's all linked to blood magic, which we are low life, so we're reserving our life with these 3 skills. Now we're going to do our Herald of Ice setup. It has crit strikes and AoE. This makes it so our Herald of Ice procs are larger and do more damage. They can be critted, so this is great. They add a mana multiplier to it, so it does cost a bit more to use this version of Herald of Ice, but it is very much worth it in my opinion because the pops are very large and do a lot more damage for us. I have linked Flesh and Stone to this setup. You don't have to, you can have this as a standalone link, but I have it linked because it gives Flesh and Stone a better area of effect, so we can blind enemies from a further distance, but you do not have to have that linked. Next, I'm going to be talking about our mobility. We're using Dash to get around the map. We also have Second Wind, so we get 2 charges, and Arcane Surge at level 5, so every time we dash, we proc this Arcane Surge. Now we have Immortal Call linked with Cast when damage taken and Tempest Shield, so whenever we get hit, we have it at very low levels. Cast when damage taken is level 2, Immortal Call level 4, Tempest Shield level 8. We do this because we want our cast when damage taken to have a low threshold of damage to be taken. That way we can cast Tempest Shield and Immortal Call as often as possible whenever we're taking hits. And lastly, we have Precision, our Aura, and Evolve Righteous Fire. These are not linked to anything. Our Precision gives us the aura of accuracy and crit strike chance, which is very important for our build. You can lower the level of Precision if necessary if you don't have enough mana to reserve for it, because Precision, the mana it uses, it scales off the level it is, unlike other aura gems. Evolve Righteous Fire, we're only using the Vol skill. It will take 30% of your energy shield when you use it, but you gain a buff of about 27% more spell damage when you use it to give yourself more bossing potential. Now it's time for the passive skill tree. This is what the final tree is going to look like. If you're interested in looking at what the leveling tree will actually look like, you're going to want to go into the leveling section of this build guide, and I will show you guys what the life version and transferring into low life will look like. But as for the final tree, we're going to be heading straight through. We're going to be grabbing as many crit nodes as possible. We're going to be grabbing, make sure you grab Pain Attunement. Arcane Vision is optional. We need this mana reservation node, this single one right here. Other than specking all 4 of these into Sovereignty or just specking these 2, I figured it was better to spec into Influence, because then we get increased effect of non-curse auras, so things like Discipline, Zealotry, and Hatred are getting boosted now. We grab crit. I put my Frozen Trail up here. You could also put it down here, it doesn't matter. You're going to want to put your Thread of Hope right here, and that allows you to grab Glancing Blows. Sorry, I'm in POB, so it doesn't show what you grab with it for some reason. It allows you to grab Glancing Blows, Sanctity for the ES, and Precision, because it gives us some nice accuracy and movement speed and dex. And you can also grab Retribution, whereas this is the weakest thing I'm grabbing, so this is the first thing to be dropped probably. As for the Cluster Jewel, you grab the Cluster Jewel up here with Blanketed Snow, which I don't have on currently because I'm still trying to craft it. And then you're going to want to grab Chilling Presence and Cold Conduction medium jewel, and a Magnifier and Vast Power medium jewel as well. And that's pretty much pretty standard choices for your build. We get a lot of ES where we can. We're grabbing a lot of shield nodes, so Arcane Swiftness, Mystic Bulwark, and Arcane Guarding. These are great choices for shields because it gives us a lot of bonus block chance, spell block, and attack block, and those will help us mitigate a lot of damage. This Arcane Swiftness is a really good skill because it allows us to avoid stun and avoid ailments, so that's actually really helpful. And as for an anointment, I'm going to go over the anointment choices really quick. Depth Perception is a great choice to go with if you are struggling getting max accuracy and crit chance. This kind of gives us crit chance, global accuracy, and plus accuracy. This gives us a lot. If you are not struggling on accuracy at all, you're going to want to go with No Witnesses, and only choose No Witnesses if you do not go with Mistwalker, because if you're going with Mistwalker, there's no reason to grab No Witnesses. But if you grab Mistwalker, I recommend grabbing Deflection, because this gives us a lot more block. It makes you a lot safer. And if you are against grabbing Deflection, then you can go with some like something like Doomcast or Arcane Potency, where it gives you more crit damage. Or you can, if you want more ES, you can grab something like Insightfulness. But I highly recommend grabbing Deflection because it gives us a lot of block. Now it's time to go over the Ascendency choices. There's a few choices, but as your first Ascendency choice, I recommend going Unstable Infusion no matter what, because this gives us power charges. Then we can start speccing in our power charges as we're leveling for like Instability, Infuse, and then we can grab Disciple Forbidden. This will give us a lot of damage boost while leveling because you actually get power charge on non-crit as well. So it makes leveling pretty smooth, really damage focused, so you don't have to worry as much. Next, I'd recommend going either Deadly Infusion or Opportunistic. Those are really good choices as your 2 and 3. And then going Ambush and Assassinate as your 4th is really helpful. Pretty much guarantees crit, gives us a lot of crit multi on when the enemies are on full life, so we can just like one-shot packs very easily while mapping, and it also gives us Culling Strike, so we kill them really fast. A option to go in this build if you prefer to be a little safer is go with Mistwalker and take off Ambush and Assassinate. This will allow us to be a lot more defensive. We gain Elusive pretty much permanently, and then you would not use No Witnesses, you would anoint something else. But if you go with this, you are a lot safer and a lot faster, So I recommend trying this out if you have a lot of crit, but if you're struggling and your crit chance isn't super high, you see where mine's pretty high, but with this on, it doesn't show the effective crit, but 100% more crit on low life and full life. That makes me pretty much almost crit capped. So using this is actually still a decent choice for me. For the bandits, you're going to want to kill all. This is because you want the 2 extra passive points, because it will do more than helping Alira, in my opinion, because you can put those points into jewels or cluster jewels, which will be doing more for you in the build in the long run. For the Pantheon recommendations I'm going to be making, Soul of Brine King for the stun recovery and you can't be stunned are really good choices. If you have 100% stun avoidance, and I recommend going Soul of Arcali for the ES recovery rate and the chaos resistance. For the miner, I'm going to be recommending Garakan because it gives you movement speed, but any of these combinations can work. Pantheons don't have a huge impact on the game overall, in my opinion. So choose what will fit with your build the best, but if you're looking for recommendations on what to use, I recommend using Brine King and Garakan. Now I'll be discussing some leveling options for this build. This is probably not your first build in the league, so you're going to have a little bit of currency to work with. To make that leveling a little easier, here are some of item recommendations I'm going to make for the early levels, ideally before level 68. You're going to want the Bitter Dream or Tabula Rasa. These are excellent choices because Bitter Dream gives us a ton of support skills, and if you're using something like Frostbolt or Freezing Pulse to level up your character at the early levels, using a Bitter Dream is an excellent choice, or Tabula Rasa, just so you could socket more support gems. Also using Lifesprig and Tollborn Spiral Wand are also great choices to use while leveling up. Helps you out with early level damage, so leveling is just a breeze. Wanderlust, Wool Shoes, also a great option. Most people already probably know about that, movement speed and all that stuff. And Karui Ward Jade Amulet, also a great option if you're using Freezing Pulse or Frostbolt, just to make your projectiles that much better. As for leveling up, you're going to want to use a Frozen Trail or a First Snow, depending if you're leveling up with a Frostbolt or a Freezing Pulse. Just this makes it so you get additional projectiles without using lesser multiple projectiles, so you can do more damage, and it just makes leveling a lot smoother of a process. After level 68, you're going to want to grab yourself a Cospris Malice, like I said, Tower Shield and a Carcass Jack, or any kind of body piece with 5 link and energy shield or a good life pool. This will allow you to start using Cast on Crit Cyclone Ice Nova as your main skill, and you can start actually kind of playing the game. These are great options to use, and they allow you to pretty much clear the rest of the game like this. You can do a lot of damage, especially with, like I said, shield, because it will allow you to always hit, so enemies can't evade your hits, so you pretty much have 100% accuracy. This allows you to just worry about getting crit, and we have a lot of power charges anyways by this time, so our crit should be pretty good after you've generated maximum power charges. Other good things to worry about, for your gem links, you're going to want Cyclone, Cast on Crit, Ice Nova. That's your main one. As for leveling, you might want to put on increased crit strikes. This will allow your critical strikes to have more of an impact and be more likely, so you don't have to worry about it as much. And inspiration, that would be your fifth link. This will give you more crit, so you don't have to worry about getting a lot of crit from your gear, or like being worried about hitting your last Ascendency to guarantee crit. And as your sixth link, Hypothermia. And once you can, once your crit is in a good spot, you want to change your increased crit strike support for a Awakened Cold damage gem. Another good switch for your cast when damage taken is adding a Summon Ice Golem. This will also increase your crit and accuracy, but you can take it off. This takes the spot of Vol Righteous Fire in your build, But if you're early levels, you don't really have to worry about Vaal Righteous Fire anyways while leveling, so having a summon Ice Golem just makes the gameplay a lot more smooth. And if you're having issues leveling or anything, leave a comment down and I'll try to help you out. And if you're having any issues or you don't know what to use at any point in the level, take a look at my form guide that I posted down below in the description. It has a little more details than I went into in this build, so hopefully it'll help you out. Now I'm going to be talking about the leveling tree I went with. So to start out, you start out as a shadow and you go through the elemental damage, grab trickery, grab life nodes because you are leveling up. We're not going to start as an energy shield character. We actually convert later on, so make sure you save your orbs of regret. You're going to head over assassinate to grab crit nodes. You're going to head down here to resourcefulness and lethal assault. You're going to grab written in blood. And then at this point, you're going to make a decision. If you're using a shield, you can grab Arcane Swiftness. But if you are not using a shield and you're doing something like double wand or double scepter, skip the shield nodes. You're going to head straight down, pass all these, and grab more life because it's going to be helpful. And we're going to grab these later on. Don't worry about grabbing power charges and don't worry about grabbing jewels unless you have a like a frozen trail you can slot in here, or a rare jewel that you have a really good rare jewel just sitting in your bag somehow. You could also put this in here, but if you don't have one, just skip those. After that, we're gonna head straight over here down to the witch tree and head straight up and grab more life. And you're gonna do the same thing, insert jewel, skip power charge, and if you have a shield, grab arcane guarding. And by here, you should have be close to your, or if not, have your first Ascendency, Unstable Infusion. By the time you get Unstable Infusion, you can start grabbing power charge nodes, so the instability, the infused, and then go up here and grab Disciple of the Forbidden. This will give us more power charges and more damage per power charge, and we generate them pretty quick with our Ascendency. You're going to head over and you're going to skip all this and grab life. You can grab Sovereignty. Oh, and grab Purity of Flesh. My bad, I skipped that. You grab Purity of Flesh and Devotion just to get more life. And you're going to grab Sovereignty. That way you can sock it in other things. But you do not need Sovereignty as for this life tree. But you're only going to socket it in when you want to use Discipline. So if I turn on Discipline right here, I'm not going to have enough mana, but I will with Sovereignty. So only socket in when you socket in Discipline, you're going to use Sovereignty. So remember that those are two go together for the leveling. So what you're going to do now is you're going to take a check and say, hey, by the time you've probably hit Sovereignty and grabbed all of these things, you're probably a decent level. And if you have some decent energy shield gear on, like you're looking and you have an energy shield on quite a bit of your pieces, you can be like, maybe I want to convert into CI by now. Usually I was around level 65 to 68 when I converted into CI. And you guys are going to be able to sooner if you guys prep better. But what you're going to do to see if you can convert into CI is what you're going to do is you're going to go to import export build and then type in your account name here. Your account might be private, so you're going to have to go onto pathofexile.com and make it public. But if you do that, you click start and then you click what league you're in. So I'm in Harvest League, and then you get to select your character and then you import your item and skills and your passive tree and jewels. By doing that, you'll get the tree you have currently with all the gear you currently have on. By doing this, what we're going to do is take a look. See, I have 90 points on my 90 passive points I've used, so I'm going to remember that number, and then I'm going to take a look and look at my energy shield and life. So I have this much energy shield and life, so we're going to say I have 4,800, so I can just say I almost have 5,000 total life and energy shield. So we're going to see what it looks like when I go to CI. So I'm going to take off all my life nodes, so I can take that one off too. What I can do is socket in Chaos Inoculation, and then what are other life nodes? You can socket off that, you can take off that, and then we can see we have 77 currently, so we're going to put in all of these nodes. That allows us to take off those. Grab this. I'm at 82. Grab that. What else can we grab? We're at 84. We can start grabbing some jewels. And you can see we have some space to work with. I can just grab this and say I'm at 90 now. By this we see we're at 4,000 energy shield. Because we also have sovereignty on. Remember to put that on, because when you're converting into CI, you're going to want to have discipline on, so you're going to want to also have sovereignty on. By doing this, we have around 4,000 energy shield. Yours might be lower or higher, but I would say that's a good spot to start using CI. That's actually a really good spot. I would say anything that is like 3,200, 3,500 and over is a good spot to start. So you're also going to take Ghost Reaver, because this node is giving us spell damage leech, and we could take an advantage and make that a bigger leech. So I'm actually at 91, kind of a liar, so I'll take off this for a second. But you guys get the idea now of how to convert into CI and test it for yourself. Hopefully this was a good explanation, and if you have any questions and you're confused about how to get a cleaner switch into CI, then go ahead and leave a comment or send me your POB, and I'll take a look at it and say what you can do or what gear pieces you're missing that you can change to give yourself a better chance to have a cleaner change into CI. Now once you've converted into CI, it's going to be really easy to transition into low life once you've purchased a Chevron's wrappings and a Prism Guardian shield. All you're going to have to do is unspec CI and spec it into Pain Attunement, and you're pretty much all ready to go. And that's how easy it is. That's why I highly recommend going into CI before you go into a low life build from a life build. So that's all I had for this video. I hope this video really helped you out. I tried to explain things a little more than others, but I tried to limit the amount I talked about each thing, because I actually made a version of this build where I talked, and it ended up being like a crazy amount of time, like over an hour, so I had to condense a lot of things in this build, so I didn't get to fully explain everything I wanted to, but I hope you guys got the gist of it. If you have any questions or need further explaining, go ahead and leave a comment down in the comments down below, because I will explain things that if you have any question on, no matter how like new you are to the game, don't worry, I am more than willing to answer anything. Just make sure that you watch the full video if you feel like you don't have an understanding of the build, because I talk about things randomly, and read the forum guide as well if you're struggling on mimicking how I did the build or don't have an understanding of what choices I made. I made a forum post, so that should help you out. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great league, and I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope to see you guys later in the next video. Peace.